The Macan is Porsche's bestseller, with almost 1 million units sold under its belt. It's that affordable SUV come hot hatch that still has that Porsche brilliance. And now the electric version has taken the market by storm. It is probably the new electric car that I see most on the road. And this fully electric version is showing no signs of slowing the Macan name down in Porsche's range. And today I'm driving the Macan 4, which is around 400 horsepower, almost 400 miles of claimed range. It starts in the UK at £68,000, and I feel it's the Goldilocks of Porsche's entire EV range. And as their best seller, it needs to strike that balance of performance, range, and usability. And I wonder, will it have the soul of a Porsche like the Taycan managed to do so effortlessly in our eyes, convince us that it was a Porsche despite being an EV? That's a battle that the new Macan has to win. So today, in typical Raz fashion, I'm going to peel back the skin and I'll show you exactly how this new electric Macan works, particularly in reference to how it differs to the Taycan and indeed its platform cousins. We'll also go over every single variant and discuss buying and owning it, because the car has been out for a while now. We're going to take a look at the used market and have a really frank discussion about buying this car new. And another topic that is super fascinating for all of us, and that's Porsche's massive strategy shift. They are spending billions now, coming back to ICE and hybrid rather than just chasing electrification. And we're going to talk about what that means for Porsche and the models that could be coming up, including perhaps an ICE Macan at some point in the future. So guys, today, everything and the kitchen sink before we go out and drive this, the brand new Macan 4 EV. Speaking of removing stuff before you race, don't finish too fast, boys. Guys, today's episode is sponsored by Manscaped. Manscaped are RBR's oldest partner. And the reason for this is, I think the modern man really cares about looking great and feeling great. And I think hygiene and looking good downstairs has been a taboo that Manscaped has since broken. And that's why you guys resonate with this so much. And this is the best package possible to do that if you've been waiting, and it's the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. It starts with their hero product, which is this, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. And it's rather special. It comes with two heads. The first head is your trimmer blade that comes in different lengths, and that is for cutting your thicker, longer hairs. When you're done with that, and you want to have that baby skin-like clean-shaven finish at the end of it, which is going to look and feel amazing, then you've got the foil blade here that helps you get that super smooth finish. Both of these blades have skin-safe technology to stop you from getting the nicks and cuts that you get elsewhere, and you can also use them in water and in the shower because they are waterproof. The other great thing about these, you get an LED light in 2 different temperatures, so you have your own spotlight for those harder to see areas. You've got USB-C cable, so you're not getting ripped off like other brands who force you to get silly cables. And it's got an LED indicator, so it doesn't suddenly just turn off when you're not expecting it. And that is supported then by further products. One is this, the Crop Soother for your post-shave, and then this, the Crop Preserver, so you're also smelling fresh everywhere. And that's not all. In this package, you also get the Weed Whacker 3.0 Pro with its interchangeable heads for getting rid of your nose hairs, your ear hairs, trimming the eyebrows. Again, it's usable in the water, in the shower as well. And it doesn't end there. Further gifts in this package, the Shed 2.0 travel bag and the Boxers 2.0 to package yourself up. So everything you need to make yourself feel great and to provide that confidence when you're with that special person in your life as well. So guys, you also get a great discount at RBR. Use the code RBR15, you get a straight 15% off, free international shipping at manscaped.com. Just use that code RBR15. And just a huge thank you to you guys for supporting our oldest partner and for taking care of yourselves in the process, and the channel. A huge thank you. Let us now get back to the car. So guys, the original Macan shared its platform with Audi's Q5. And despite that, it managed to maintain its identity in a big way, and it's been so loved by customers. And much of the same story is true of our EV Macan, which uses the PPE, or Premium Platform Electric, with VAR Group, which is shared amongst other cars in the group, like Audi's Q6. Now, this is nothing new. Remember also with the Taycan, how it is also platform buddies with the e-tron GT, and there's countless cars within group which are similar. So this is not a red flag in any sense of the word. Now let's start with the basis. The basis is, of course, an electric car, the battery. And in this, we have a 100 kilowatt lithium ion battery, which has got usable kilowatts of 95. And in this case, gives us range quoted of up to 379 miles on a single charge. Now, what is cool is this platform is an 800-volt architecture platform, which means that when it comes to charging, we get a massive 270 kilowatt maximum charging power, which sees this car charge from 10 to 80% in around about 20 minutes. And if you go to a 400-volt charger, it can split the battery into two pairs and then charge them simultaneously, still reaching really high speeds. So, charging tech, very Porsche. Recuperation from the electric motors is great. It's 240 kilowatts. And speaking of those drive units, they're of course the next most important thing. Porsche calls these PSM motors their next generation ones, specifically for the PPE platform. And they feature hairpin windings with rectangular copper wire for better packing basically and better heat transfer. And then we have silicon carbide inverters in the rear axle, which minimize losses and allow for essentially better current and thus more power and better efficiency. So overall, better motors, which are more powerful. Though our gearbox, unlike the Taycan, which is a 2-speed gearbox, we have a single-speed one in this, which is it's simpler, it's lighter, it's quieter, and it kind of betrays the fact that this is more of a mass-produced model. But that gets helped by the fact that the PSM motors are now a bit more advanced. Now, I say motors. The base Macan has a single one, which is in the rear. So it's rear-wheel driven with the larger motor in the rear. And then Macan 4 and everything above is, of course, all-wheel drive. And you have a second PSM motor in the front. And as I said, although Porsche shares the rear motor with Audi, they use the silicon carbide inverter and Audi don't. They use a simple one, and their power control and cooling is better, so you get essentially more power for more sustained lengths of time, which is exactly what you expect of a Porsche SUV. Now in the Macan 4, we get power of 408 PS, 650 Newton meters, 0 to 60 of 5.2 seconds, which of course we will test. And finally, you have a top speed of 137 miles per hour, and like I said, claim range of 379. That goes at the moment all the way up to turbo at its crazy 639 horsepower. Now let's talk about suspension. As standard, you get the steel suspension with PASM active dampers in there, but you can also opt for the suspension that our car today has, quite surprisingly, which is the air suspension with the new 2-valve damper, as we first saw in the Cayenne and the Panamera, which controls compression and rebound independently. And finally, rear axle steering of up to 5 degrees is optional, which in fact our car today has as well, so we'll test that later. So that is the technical basis for your Macan, undoubtedly right up there in terms of EV technology right now, which is great for what is essentially a mid-size SUV. Now let's talk about design. And versus the previous Macan, it's unmistakably Macan still, this electric one. You can see immediately that it's a bit longer, it's about 4 inches longer. It's a bit wider as well, which again, very obvious on the front end. And it's very Cayenne to me now as well. Not just here sitting still, but on the road as well, which I think is a good thing. And the other good thing is, despite the fact that this shares platform with Q6, it looks very different to the Q6. Super, super different. Q6, much bigger car. And then I think this should put your mind to rest that when these cars are sharing platform, it means even less now than it used to. Because I think Macan and Q5 used to look fairly similar in their size. These cars can be wildly different. Now, let's talk about some of the details in the design. The key is very different. Dare I say, a bit plasticky, but quite chunky. I like the shape of it. Let's look at the rest of the front end. Of course, you've got the Taycan style DRLs on top, which I'm so glad they've given the electric cars their own look, whereas the combustion cars have their own one. But those are just the DRLs. Underneath, in what looks like large air intakes, are your main lights. And yes, it's very much in the vein of 7 Series and the Audi e-tron cars, but I think less noticeable in this because the front end looks so Taycan. So in that sense, it doesn't jar you like it does in those cars at all. And then you've got like the muscular shoulders, you've got the shallow bonnet, which is very, very Porsche, and then a massive front splitter at the bottom, which is in this one, the off-roading package style, which you can see with the matte metallic look and the off-roading grooves. You'll also see that on the sides of the car and on our rear diffuser, very much like the Taycan off-road package. Lower down, you've got active aerodynamics in our front end and the radar in between there. When we look at the side, it's great to have the Porsche side blade there back, like we had in the original car. It helps reduce some of that battery bulk. We still have our frameless windows, which is nice. So that's really great to see. And overall, I love that front 3/4. It's instantly recognizable. The side and rear 3/4 to me are so Cayenne. I have to double back and check sometimes what model it is, but the light bar gives that element away. It's thick, It's thicker than any other Porsche at the moment, and 3D with the Porsche logo inside, and it's different enough to Cayenne, I feel. Is it a bit too thick? Because it does sometimes remind me of the Lotus Electra. And I also feel Timo Tony Stark's fascist Model Y has shamelessly copied the rear end of this car in its recent update, and I'd love to know what you guys think. We also have active aerodynamics again in the rear with the spoiler, which is adjustable. That entire rear 3/4, yes, very Cayenne, but also reminds me of Taycan and Macan. So blending all of those together into, well, truly what is a blend of all of those cars, to be honest. Now the boot is 540 litres, and of course you can split fold and get loads of space in there, which I did. It's even a press car if you don't go to IKEA, which I did, and I got a lot in there. And then adding your 84 litre frunk, you get 127 more than the old Macan, which is good going. Then we have the wheels, where you have a huge selection of wheels. These are the off-roading style ones on this car, and you can also go up to 22 inches maximum, which look huge on this and really, really nice. And what I love about Macan is that it can look wildly different depending on how you spec it. And that's a very Porsche thing. And the downside is you can end up spending a lot of money, but the nice thing is, unlike the rivals, the cars can look wildly different depending on a lot of different packages that you can get on the car. And I love that element. Now guys, let's talk about variants of this car. Now, you can still buy the ICE Macan in the UK and some other territories, and you will continue being able to do so in the near future. That car starts at 56k in the UK, and it's only a 10k-ish price hike to the new Macan EV, which really is good bang for buck considering how old the previous Macan is and how much value you're going to get from both the new technology, the amazing interior, and then the general cost savings. So not the massive price hike that you might think. Now, in terms of the variants you get in the EV, as we said, we start with the rear-wheel drive variant at 68,500. This has got 360 PS, so a bit less, and it's got the most miles, almost touching 400 miles quoted. So that is your range monster, should you want it, and the most affordable one. And it's probably a pretty good car that I'd be interested in driving, being rear-wheel driven. Then we have our Macan 4 that we have today, which I said probably the Goldilocks. Then above that, 4S, which is about 100 PS more. Is that necessary? It's an interesting one. 4S has always been Goldilocks in the past and may well end up being in this generation as well. Then you take a huge leap to the £96,000 turbo with its 639 PS, which is, of course, wild. And should you want it, it is there. Now, guys, let's talk buying, because rightly so, you guys are going to be worried about residual values given how the electric market has been recently. And that's good, you're smart, I like that. But don't worry too much when it comes to this car. The new Macan has been out for almost a year now. There's 160 odd examples on the used market here in the UK, and I can't find one less than around about 63k. And that's a really good sign considering how close that is to list price. So on the face of it, Macan doing much better than Taycan on the used market. Also bear in mind, Taycan Gen 1, you can pick up for around about 44, 45 at the moment. But of course, that's old technology with less miles. And bear in mind, new Taycan, you will be paying 88k starting price on that. So like I said, really as an affordable start to the Porsche EV story, I think getting a Macan or a Macan 4 and sensibly speccing it, don't go wild on the specs please, is still a really good shout to explore. Now let's go further into the future. Undoubtedly a news story that you have heard, an internal memo sent by Oliver Blume of Porsche, the CEO, saying that, look, our current strategy is just not working. And now instead, they've had a massive strategic shift coming more towards ICE power, hybrid power and electrification mix rather than just focusing on electrification. Why has this happened? Of course, it's thanks to you and me, where the customers and the market, they're not ready for it. They don't want it to the level that the manufacturers or perhaps the governments thought that they would. And Porsche are now spending in the short term something like 3 billion on this to get their strategy right. And I really respect the fact that they put their hands up and said, yes, it isn't working, but we are going to make it work and we're happy to put our money where our mouths are. They've also talked about strengthening the lineup in terms of new combustion and hybrid cars. There was an SUV to come above the Cayenne, which was going to be electric only, that is now looking to be a hybrid ICE car as an option as well, according to rumours. We then have the all-electric Boxster and Cayman that we've seen running around that were previously going to be fully electric. There's rumours about those. In fact, not even rumours, it's been confirmed that the higher end version, so whether that is GTS or GT or RS, will end up being ICE powered. I wonder if they're going to be sharing something with 911 in that regard. So that's great news as well. And then, again, Oliver Blume has said that they are planning a small SUV, much like Macan, to come no later than 2028. Autocar have said that this is a project code named M1, and it's said to be based on, you're going to guess it easily, the Q5 PPC, premium platform combustion platform that the Q5 uses, and probably sharing engines, and it's rumoured to share the Quattro tech being a bit more front biased as well. So is that a new ICE Macan? It sounds quite likely. It could also be a new model. But the point of it is there's a big strategy shift where cars like this and cars like we've had in the past are going to be coexisting together at Porsche. Now guys, the interior, which is a big upgrade, of course, versus Macan, but quite the big upgrade versus other Porsche cars in the lineup as well. And the interior on the one that we have today, while the oak green Neo on the outside is lovely, the inside is just as nicely specced. Now this is wholly different to the original Macan interior, and to me a lot closer to Cayenne, and actually quite close to 911, 992 generation in the structure, where the vents are, the screen, this middle center console, and then the shape of the dash with the compass in the middle. So now you have a choice of either two screens, so your curved 12-inch style screen like the Taycan in the driver zone, and then your central display in the middle, and the option for the passenger display. And you can also get heads-up display with augmented reality navigation. What I really like is that the dash structure, like I said, very much a 911, particularly with then the compass in the middle. The driver zone area being quite focused is nice. I love the vents. These are now part digital, part physical, because as all of us found, the digital ones in the Taycan were just too fiddly. Now you can control these in terms of the direction yourself, and it's a much better way to do it. It's nice to have physical buttons here. We've got the lovely SUV style structure with the handlebars, again, very Cayenne and nicely done here. Of course, this is an EV, so no central tunnel, meaning more storage here with your cup holders, place to put your phone, your digital key. We have your wireless phone charger in here, which is of course cooled now, so it keeps your phone cool while you're charging. We now have integrated ambient lighting, as you see coming through here, which is absolutely gorgeous. And this links to a whole new themes thing that I'm really excited to show you. We'll get onto that in a sec. Then you've got your buttons in the middle for climate control, which all have 911 style toggles here, which are in a metallic finish, and then your volume button in the middle. Of course, you've got our 14-way comfort seats finished in that night green, which look incredible. You can go for the standard seats as well, they're going to be as good. And this interior, this two-tone black and night green interior is absolutely gorgeous, and it's only around about £1,300 in terms of an option, which to my mind, massive bang for buck given how nice it looks. Your steering wheel is of course same as 911, 992 generation, with our drive select drive mode in here. No paddles for regeneration, that's controlled, at least we've set it, on the shortcut button of the steering wheel here. So this is a very traditional Porsche interior while bringing in the digital side, and the digital side has been hugely improved now in this. This is an all new operating system that's actually Android based. So Android now do a car operating system, and it's been layered with Porsche's own version, which I actually couldn't believe because it's really similar to what PCM was in the past. I just thought it was updated PCM, but it is so much slicker and speedier now in terms of reactiveness. And this is the first car to receive it. It's now rolled into Cayenne. It'll probably come into the future in all the other updates of the cars as well. And I think my favorite part has to be the themes. So at the moment we are in a green theme. You can see that around the car, it matches the car. Let's say we shift into the orange, and it gives you a whole different ambience inside. You can pair it with the ambient lighting, as this toggle shows here, though this line that goes along the top is called a communication light. And this one at the moment isn't changing, and I've not been able to change it. The ambient lighting changes to the respective color, which is nice, but the communication light doesn't change. I'm not sure if that's a bug or a feature. So apparently it was a bug, because the light has changed. I'm in orange, and my communication light is also in orange. So if I change it, well, hey, now it's actually working. So previously this was not working, as you saw. All these things happen in new cars, but you can see you get quite the change then in the interior ambiance as you shift between these different colors, which is great. It's a real upgrade over what they've had so far in the past. But I love the themes. I love the fact that Porsche are now doubling down on the digital side. That includes things like the driver zone here, which now, again, we have lots of options like your assistance view and a partial maps view. We've got a reduced view with just your speed. And then of course your typical 3 circles where you can choose the content that you want. And then you have the widget screen on the side where you can decide what tiles you want to have. So we've got quick access here where I can turn off the speed warning, music and ambient lighting, but you can choose that to whatever you want to have on there. And it's nice to have a customized screen. And all of that is again themed in the color that you've chosen in the theme over here. So I like that, that's all really slick. And I think the themes links then to what they've upgraded now in Cayenne with the mood modes, which takes that idea even further. So Macan not in any way behind even the future car, showing you a similar type of thing in software here. So while Taycan started this idea in a very light way with its ambient lighting, the Macan and then the Cayenne are taking it much further, as they should be, now finally matching the rivals where they were quite a bit far behind them in the past. Now we've got a lot more cabin storage in here. So you've got storage in here because of no central tunnel, 2 good cup holders surrounded by ambient light. You've got your phone wireless charger here, which is actually cooled because wireless charging obviously gets your phone quite hot. You've got lots of space in your central cubby hole here in the door cards, tons of room everywhere. And in the back, more legroom than before because of course this car, 4 inches longer. This particular car has no sunroof, but you've got massive head height in here, both in the front and I'll show you in the rear in a second. This car's also optioned with the Bose surround system, the standard one, and you can get the upgraded one in the Macan as well. One option it's missing though, which is going to make me cry while we're driving, is Porsche's electric sound, which I absolutely loved in the Taycans that I owned, and it makes these cars sound like spaceships. Porsche do a really good job on electric sound. Sadly, this car doesn't have it, and we'll talk about that later when we go out for a drive. Now, one super useful thing in modern Porsches is the Porsche app, where you get widgets, for example, on your phone or on your watch, and then on the main page, you get all the necessary information about the car. For example, battery percentage, range. You're able to choose the cabin preconditioning and set things like every weekday I want to wake up at this time and have the car at this certain temperature and the heated seats on these seats, etc. You can really dial into what you want it to do on what specific day. And then you go to, for example, the maps and you can actually find charging stations on there. You can filter them by power. You can set your route and send it to the car. You can also plan longer trips. For example, if I put in Edinburgh, it will tell you how you're going to get there, how many stops you need. You can decide how much range you want as you arrive at your destination as well, and it will work it out accordingly, send it to the car's navigation, and off you go. It makes that longer journey so much easier to do, and I experienced that in Taycan, and Macan is doing the exact same thing. And the other thing linked to this is when you buy a new Porsche EV or hybrid, you get 3 years free on their Porsche Charging Service, or PCS. And essentially, you can use that to get consistent charging costs with their partners. For example, I put in a Shell station and PCS has standardized pricing. So 44p per kilowatt hour for AC and 59p per kilowatt hour for DC charging, which is a pretty good rate considering it's 80, 90, even higher sometimes in a lot of these fast chargers. And you go to Ionity or a Porsche charger and it's even cheaper at 39 pence per kilowatt hour, which is a real bargain. So you get that for 3 years, and beyond the 3 years, it then becomes $13.99 per month. So this is a really useful thing for new car buyers of Porsche EVs and hybrids. The other ease of convenience is you can either use the Porsche charging card to get started, or if you get this keyring with the blue stitching on it, this actually has a reader inside it where you can just tap and pay for your charging and the charging will just start. So all of that really useful and is all designed to kind of make the whole charging experience a lot easier. Jumping in the back, headroom is massive. I'm 5'10", I've got loads of headroom. Legroom is decent as well for a car that still looks like a really small crossover and sometimes a hatchback. So in that sense, it's nice. I think you get a bit more room, and it all matches the front with the ambient lighting, highlights within the door cards and matching vents, etc. So yeah, nice in the rear and lots of space compared to what we had before. Overall, love this interior. It takes the best parts of all the recent modern Porsches, doesn't go too crazy on screens, particularly if you don't want the passenger screen, and it all feels very driver focused, but still very Porsche SUV. And if you trim it right, like Porsche Press here have done in the UK, you're in for an absolute winner, particularly with these new themes. So guys, let us begin talking about real world range, which is something I haven't talked about yet. We've talked about the quoted range, but the real world range on a car like this, which is meant to be the most daily Porsche EV that you can get, so it has to suit more lifestyles than the Taycan could, is a really important point. And at the moment, in 14 degrees weather, we're getting quoted around about 316 miles, which is actually very good for this side of the market for a mid-size SUV. It's way better than OG Taycan, which in this weather, because weather is so important with EVs and range, was around about the 200-mile mark. And then the new Taycan, obviously much better with its NMC battery, closer to what this car is. So you will find most cars in this segment won't be any better than what the Macan is quoting. And as you get into warmer weather, that's only going to be better. It's also depended how I've been driving, so I've seen a range figure above that, I've seen a range figure below that as well, so it does adapt to your driving style. So that's a good amount of range, and it's going to suit a lot more lifestyles and workflows. And then it's well supported, I think, by the 800-volt architecture and that fast charging, and the PCS charging that they're giving you free for 3 years. It's also quite similar to the Q6, which is a much more daily car, and I suspect is not going to be anywhere near as dynamic as this when we start pushing this. Now, to begin properly, let's talk about the performance stuff, and we're going to start with speed. Of course, launch control is where you get the most power out of Porsche EV, so we're going to go into sport and begin with that. So let's see how this fares now as pretty much the base all-wheel drive version. Oh yes, look at that, 4.65 seconds. That is much quicker than the quoted 5.2. And it feels quick as well. It really reminded me of Taycan launching. And this is just, like I said, just the base all-wheel drive Macan. So that's great. Now, even when it comes to speed, the main thing I'm looking for from this car, like I said, is some of that Porsche soul and some of that immediate kind of, listen, I'm the Porsche in the segment, which is what the Taycan did so brilliantly from the off. The Macan, to me, hasn't really done that from the first 100 yards, which the Taycan does for everybody. The Macan is doing it now, the more I delve into it. So that speed element was the first clue. And because it's an EV, what's great is that speed element is not just from launch, it's pretty much every scenario that you find yourself in. Not just in the sport mode that we're in now, which obviously is the most reactive and the fastest that this car will be. And genuinely, to me, it reminds me of the Taycan 4S. It doesn't feel slow. You go into normal and comfort mode and it does relax in that regard. I found the Taycan to be almost, I would keep it in comfort because I didn't really feel like I needed to go to the other modes. With this one, I feel sport is actually a lot quicker and pretty much where you should probably keep the car most of the time as a Porsche driver. So I like driving in sport. I do wonder, the 4S, is that going to feel even more Taycan-like because it's got, you know, that extra 100 horsepower and it's only 5,000 more, which in the scheme of things, not bad. Particularly, I think buyers, a lot of them are quite vain in this regard, whereas you and I will be like, yeah, base model is fine. 4S might end up just being better on the used market, so that's something to bear in mind. But I find this quick enough, and I really want to drive the base rear-wheel drive. I want to see, is that also as impressive as this is in terms of being just the right speed to use for fun and for daily uses. Now, I've got the air suspension. I've put the car into low, which it doesn't default on sport, because I want to show you the handling. The handling is where this car has wowed me, because I came into this having lived about 3 months with the Q6 and thinking, look, this is going to be pretty similar. Yeah, a bit more dynamic, but holy smokes, this is a different car altogether. It truly reminiscent of Taycan. Yes, taller, yes, a bit more body roll, etc., as you would expect, but this is just the base Macan 4, and already it's giving me all the right signals. Let's talk about those signals. So first and most importantly, and the crucial factor that's different to the rivals, is the steering. The steering is fantastic. It is just as pointy as you find in every other Porsche car. You point towards a line that you want to drive on and this car will follow it. And it's truly stunning in that regard, and something that we became used to, and one of the reasons that the original Macan was so successful is that it did this when other SUVs in the segment wouldn't. And I was worried, and I'm sure you were coming into this, that being a heavier EV, etc., it's going to lose a lot of that, but the handling is really the standout element of this car to me. Of course, in this specific spec, we're still benefiting from rear-wheel steering, which I'd love to try a car without it, because I found in Taycan it wasn't really needed, and that's a longer car. And then the other side is, of course, the air suspension with the 2-valve adaptive damper, which will help in dynamics as well. So I'd love to try a base car with none of that. I suspect it'll still be really good, but it is in the handling then where this is reminiscent of Taycan. Otherwise, when you're driving slower, it's much more of a daily car, much like that Q6 that it shares much with. And then that's quite a differentiating point between this and Taycan, which is always out and out sports car, always very Porsche. And this hides it until you start driving like a Porsche driver. Now, speaking of the suspension, I'll put this back into normal. It does bump around, even in the air suspension, but it never jars, okay? So very much that type of modern day sports SUV feel. You don't get jarred at all. I think your occupants are going to be absolutely fine. I wonder if the steels are going to be that much harsher. In Taycan, again, I found them to be absolutely fine, particularly when you have the adaptive dampers in play. But again, I can't answer that today. The air suspension is brilliant, and when you drive around normally, like I said, very much like a standard mid-size EV SUV in terms of being nice and comfortable. And then when you're driving around slower, the steering I found to be quite light and comfortable in that sense, which is nice. One thing I must say while driving, I've noticed in the driver zone, graphics are so much crisper and clearer. You really do get a nice view of when you're using the power as the rev counter goes blue, and then when you're recuperating as it goes green. It's much improved over Taycan. Now, like I said, one option that this car is sorely missing is the Porsche electric sports sound, which in Taycan was such a emotion and smile-inducing option. Porsche were one of the first to really adopt that idea of an electric sound, and it gave us like a synthetic electric motor sound, or almost like a Star Wars starfighter sound coming through the speakers, which I loved and so many of you guys love as well. That comes standard in the turbo, and only being a £370 option is such a shame, because it makes cars like this feel so much more alive, and a lot of that Porsche soul element came in because of that, because they are expanding this thing. We know that with the Cayenne getting the V8 sounds, for example. Could Macan get more sounds in the future? Downloadable sounds, perhaps. It may be a possibility, but that is definitely something I would recommend that you do tick on the option box. So guys, the Taycan is widely and rightly considered the purest choice in the electric world. It's a car that drives differently to everything else in the market, and it's that feeling that got so many of us to buy into it, myself included. And this Macan now brings a similar formula in a more accessible price and in a package that is undoubtedly more life-centric for daily use. It has an interior that I, having lived with it now, I feel is stages above the Taycan, being much better structure, much more ergonomic, and with the all-new Android system that is really much slicker than what we've had in the past. And of course, the cherry on top is that this car drives better than any other car this side of the market. Macan 4 probably not as revolutionary as Taycan is from the moment you drive it, but as you begin to dive into the depths of this car, it is undoubtedly the Porsche of the segment. Perhaps the one that will be just like the Taycan will be the Macan Turbo, and I'm excited to drive that soon and see just how different that is. So if you're in the market for a daily EV, this is one that is seemingly doing so much better than the others in the used market. It's got range that is really, really good, right up there with everything else. But then it's got the soul of a Porsche when it comes to its dynamic ability, and that's something the others just cannot match. And in that regard, the Macan is definitely the Porsche in segment. So guys, excited to try more of the range in the future. If you've enjoyed this episode of RBR, please do like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you guys next time.